Okay, let's jump right in today with a clinical scenario that I think gives a lot of us pause.
Definitely.
You've got a patient, they clearly have cellulitis, but then you look at their allergies, it's a real roadblock.
Yeah, the triple threat.
Exactly. We're talking documented allergies to penicillin, cephalosporins, and sulfamethoxazole-trimethoprim.
Right. And that combination, well, it knocks out almost all the usual suspects for first-line treatment, oral and IV.
Let's tackle it sequentially, starting with oral therapy. Given this very restricted allergy profile, what's the recommended first-line oral choice?
In this specific situation, your first thought should usually be clindamycin.
Clindamycin.
Okay. It often becomes the primary oral go-to, sometimes simply because it's one of the few options left that works.
And why clindamycin? What coverage does it give us that makes it reliable enough to start with empirically?
Well, its key strength is hitting the common culprits. It works reliably against both streptococci, the cause of that classic spreading redness, and staphylococci.
Okay.
And really importantly, that includes MRSA, methicillin-resistant Staph aureus.
The MRSA coverage is critical.
Yeah, when you're treating empirically, you can't always rule out MRSA. Clindamycin covers both possibilities pretty well.
That dual action is definitely what we need. So let's talk specifics. Dose. What's the typical oral dosage for clindamycin in this setting?
Usually you're looking at 300 to 450 milligrams.
And how often?
That's given every 6 to 8 hours. Consistency is important, of course.
Right. Now, clindamycin isn't without its issues. It's been around a while. Resistance is a worry, isn't it?
It absolutely is. This is a major point.
So what do clinicians have to check before they decide on clindamycin?
You absolutely must know your local resistance rates. Check the local antibiogram. You just can't prescribe it blindly.
Because if resistance is high in your area,
you risk treatment failure right from the start. It's that simple.
And that brings us to something called the D-test. Sometimes that catches people out. Can you explain why that's needed? What's inducible resistance?
Right. Inducible resistance is a bit sneaky. The standard lab tests might say the bacteria is sensitive to clindamycin.
Okay.
But if that same bacteria is resistant to erythromycin, it might carry a gene, a mechanism that clindamycin itself can actually switch on.
So the bug learns to fight back during treatment.
That's a good way to put it, yes. The D-test checks for that potential. If it's erythromycin resistant, you run the D-test.
And if it's positive?
If the D-test is positive, you have to assume clindamycin will fail, even if the initial report said sensitive. You need a different drug.
That's incredibly important context. Okay, besides resistance, there's another big reason clinicians might hesitate with clindamycin: the C. diff risk.
Yes, that's the other major consideration. Clindamycin is, well, notorious for antibiotic-associated diarrhea and especially Clostridioides difficile infection.
Which can be really serious.
It can be life-threatening. So you're always balancing that broad coverage against this significant gastrointestinal risk. Maybe for a very mild case, you'd think twice, but in our scenario with so few options.
Clindamycin often stays on top of the list, despite the risk.
Until proven otherwise, yes. Either by allergy, intolerance, or that D-test result.
Okay, so let's say we hit one of those walls: allergy to clindamycin, bad GI intolerance, or, maybe more commonly, that positive D-test. What's our next best move, the effective second-line option, oral or IV?
The next strong contender is linezolid.
Linezolid. Okay, that's a powerful agent, often kept in reserve. Why does it fit so well here?
Well, linezolid still gives you excellent activity against both strep and MRSA, covers those key bases again.
Right.
And a huge advantage is its bioavailability. It's virtually a 100% bioavailable orally.
Meaning the oral dose works just as well as the IV dose.
Exactly. So you can switch seamlessly from IV to oral without changing the dose. Great for getting patients out of the hospital sooner.
That IV to PO switch is a big practical plus. What's the standard linezolid dose then?
It's straightforward. 600 milligrams every 12 hours.
And that's the same whether it's IV or oral?
Correct. 600 milligrams every 12 hours, either route.
Now, linezolid, while effective, isn't perfect either. It has its own drawbacks, doesn't it? Cost is one, I believe.
Cost is definitely a factor. It's much more expensive than something like clindamycin. But clinically, the main concerns are side effects with longer use.
Like what specific?
Primarily hematologic issues,
Yeah.
especially thrombocytopenia, low platelets. You usually see this after about 10 to 14 days of therapy.
Okay, so need to monitor blood counts with prolonged use.
Absolutely. And the other big one is drug interactions.
Ah, yes, the MAOI issue.
Right. Linezolid is a weak monoamine oxidase inhibitor. So if your patient is on serotonergic drugs like SSRI, antidepressants, for example.
Risk of serotonin syndrome.
There's a definite risk, yes. You have to meticulously review their medication list before starting linezolid. Crucial safety check.
Good point. Okay, let's escalate. Patient is sicker. Severe cellulitis, maybe systemic signs, definitely needs inpatient IV therapy. In this really restricted allergy situation, what's the go-to IV agent?
For severe infections, the primary choice has to be vancomycin.
Vancomycin, the old workhorse for serious gram-positive infections. But it's trickier to dose than linezolid, right?
Much trickier. Vancomycin dosing absolutely requires individualization. No standard dose fits all.
How is it determined?
It has to be calculated based on the patient's actual body weight and, critically, adjusted very carefully based on their renal function, their kidney function.
And why is that adjustment so vital? What happens if you get it wrong?
If you don't adjust correctly for poor kidney function, the drug accumulates. Vancomycin is cleared by the kidneys,
Leading to?
leading to toxicity, primarily nephrotoxicity, kidney damage. It can be permanent.
So careful initial calculation and monitoring are key.
Essential. Therapeutic drug monitoring, checking trough levels, especially early on, is standard practice for a reason.
Okay, so vancomycin is the main IV choice, but needs careful handling. What if vancomycin is out? Maybe they've had a bad reaction before, or their kidneys are already failing rapidly. What's the IV fallback?
In that specific situation, intravenous linezolid is your most appropriate and effective alternative.
Back to linezolid again.
Yes, its effectiveness against severe MRSA and strep makes it a reliable option, even with the cost and monitoring considerations we discussed.
Makes sense. Let's pivot slightly. Tetracyclines. Thinking doxycycline, minocycline. They're common, great for MRSA. Can we use them here in this complex allergy picture?
Yes, they can be considered, but with a very important but.
Okay.
They are good options specifically for covering MRSA. They're reliable for that.
So what's the limitation? Why aren't they just a first-line choice for cellulitis in general?
The major limitation is their lack of reliable activity against streptococci,
And strep is a big player in cellulitis.
especially in non-purulent cellulitis. You know, the type that's just red, spreading, maybe hot, but without a definite abscess or pus collection. That's often strep.
So if you pick doxycycline for that kind of cellulitis,
You're essentially gambling that it isn't strep driving the infection. If it is, doxycycline likely won't work well.
so not ideal for empirical treatment of typical undifferentiated cellulitis.
Exactly. Not as a single agent, generally. You need that reliable strep coverage.
Okay, this lays out the main options. Clindamycin, linezolid, vancomycin, and the tetracyclines with their specific niche. What if, in a really difficult case, none of these are suitable? Allergy, resistance, contraindication across the board. What's the next step procedurally?
At that point, you need backup. Immediately consult infectious diseases.
No other standard protocols.
The evidence for what to do when a patient can't take penicillin, cephalosporins, sulfa drugs, clindamycin, linezolid, or vancomycin for cellulitis is, frankly, extremely limited. You need specialist input right away.
That's a critical safety net. Beyond just picking the drug, what general monitoring approach is essential for these patients, given how restricted the options are and the potential drug toxicities?
Close follow-up is key. You need to watch carefully for clinical response. Is the infection actually getting better? Is the redness receding?
And for side effects too, presumably.
And absolutely for adverse effects. But maybe the most vital part is the dosing itself. Every dose has to be individualized. Consider renal function, how severe the infection looks, and always check those local susceptibility patterns again.
That attention to detail seems paramount.
It really is. It can make the difference between success and failure, especially in these complex cases.
It's clear we end up leaning quite heavily on drugs like clindamycin and linezolid when those first-line agents are off the table due to allergies.
We absolutely do, and that puts immense selective pressure on these alternative agents. Resistance is always evolving.
Which underlines the need for local data again.
Constantly. Relying on your local antibiogram data is the only way to keep these kinds of protocols effective. What works today might not work as well next year.
It makes you think, doesn't it? Considering how often these multi-drug allergy scenarios force us onto older drugs like clindamycin or more complex ones like linezolid or vancomycin, how is this constant pressure going to drive the need for completely new classes of antibiotics in the future, ones with different mechanisms entirely?
That's the million-dollar question, isn't it? The pipeline for truly novel antimicrobials is worryingly thin, and cases like this just highlight how urgently we need them. We're constantly reminded that we're running out of options sometimes.
A sobering thought. But for now, hopefully this framework helps. Use this knowledge right away. These steps provide a clear path to manage these challenging allergy situations safely and effectively.